Welcome again to another episode of Blam Truckers. I am your smooth-talking host, Buse. Over there, we also have...
You're not so smooth-talking host, Bees!
We're just a couple of friends from college that decided that, in our age, we decided to do a podcast together. Right now, we don't have a lot of viewers, but we're happy that you are one of the few. The proud. The truckers. And
Blam truckers. I feel like I should do some dulcet tones. Oop. I'm trying to look at him, which is throwing me off because I've got a new camera, which Buse got for me. Thank you, Buse. And it's 4K, so I'm in the best view you've ever seen of me. And frankly, I should have shaved. I didn't know the camera was going to be this good. But I can also do those smooth, dulcet tones. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to another episode of Blam Truckers out here in the trucker universe where we just like to keep things blamming.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah. So today's topic, go ahead.
If you know, you know.
Oh, yeah. Today's topic, so we're trying a brand new format because people aren't watching our hour-long, hour and a half, 2-hour videos. Not in droves anyway. So we're going to try and keep this down to 10 to 15 minutes. Got a couple of different topics we're going to be covering today during our recording, and the one for this episode. And this might actually span into two. Are my fingers on camera? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Bear with me. I'm trying to learn something new. It's hard at my age. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, you know. 2, maybe 3 different videos. The topic I came up with for this series, whatever you want to call it, is figuring out what you want your character is character creation in both tabletop RPGs and MMOs, and how game masters do it versus how players do it, and why, as a player, you might want to take a tip or two from this because it's different and it's effective. It's an effective way to make characters. Sound good to you? I can't look.
That's all
Sound good to you, Views?
Sounds good. This is why I had to remove my camera back in front of my screen so I could be looking at you at the same time. It's
I
all
might
good.
have to set up a second screen or something.
Let me know if you need a second screen. I got some spare monitors.
Yeah, I've got some. I just don't know if they work anymore.
Fair enough. All right. But I feel like you asked me something.
Yeah. Does that sound good to you? Going through. I can't do that.
I answered that. But yes. Yes, that sounds fantastic.
All right. So generally, when you're making a character, whether it's for whether it's an online character for like an MMO, or it's for a tabletop role-playing game, you want to make something that's cool and fun that you think that you, the viewer, think is cool and fun. Well, the player in this case, that you want to play. And I'm seeing that a lot right now playing City of Heroes because there's so much just sheer versatility to it. So many options. You can make your character look like not anything, but there's probably more versatility in character creation in City of Heroes than any other MMO I've ever played. Not just in appearance, but actually in the function of how your character plays.
Yep.
And the closest equivalent I can think of is actually tabletop role-playing games where you can make your character literally look like anything you can draw or describe, and you can also, because of how the various tabletop systems work, you can make that character do whatever you want it to do. And most people, when they're making a character, make one they think would be fun and cool to play, which is exactly what they should be doing. Right, Buse?
Exactly.
Is that how you make your characters?
Yep. Sometimes they're not even useful to the rest of the group, but if I have fun with them, I make them. Which I know is going to bring on to a different point later, but you know.
That's fair. So what I'm recommending, what I'm going to tell you is how game masters make characters. And then we're going to take that and put it back, maybe not in this episode, but we're going to put that back into how to make characters as a player to using that whole use-based character thing that Game masters do. So I'm playing the game. You watch me GMing for Buse, who may be over there or may be over there, depending on how these cameras end up, how he sets up the video feed. So you've seen me GM, and I needed to come up with what's his name, Officer McCooperson, Larry McCooperson. So not to give away his stats, but at the time I just needed a couple of stats, and I happen to know a lot of policemen. So I knew he would have a high search or investigate, or at least a professional level of search and investigate. I knew he'd have an above average shooting, but not a great shooting skill. Um, and what else?
At least
That's about
probably
all I've
above.
really. What?
I was thinking probably an above average, possibly professional level of hand to hand brawling.
Yeah, cops are really good fighters. They're actually better at hand-to-hand fighting than they are at shooting, on average. Just something you should know. Or to make it more realistic, cops generally are not very good marksmen. Um, they shoot once a year. Most cops never, and by most cops, I mean over 95% of police officers never pull their gun in the line of duty.
I
But
actually, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
not to interrupt, but
No, please do.
I I went to school when I was younger with a the I won't say a friend of mine, but somebody in my class. She was the daughter of the local police chief. He had been on the job for 15, 20 years by that point, and he had said he had. Now, granted, not like small town, but suburb style town in New England. We're not talking like Boston or anything like that. We're talking like suburb town in like New England. Out and yeah, never had to pull his firearm on a suspect in all of his years, and that is fairly common. Now, stuff
Over
will change.
95%.
If you're a
At
cop in New
least,
York, it's more likely to be higher. If you're a cop
you
even
mean
in
New
a
York?
city in New York, if you're a cop in a major city in the US, it's going to
Especially
skew higher.
Chicago.
But if you're a cop in most cops are in like not incredibly populated areas, like more cops in small towns than there are in cities
Yeah,
in total. I'm not talking about like per capita, I'm just saying. And
per
so
square
most
inch.
of them, I mean, most of them they're just picking up the local guy who had a little too much to drink and getting him out of the bar because he doesn't want to leave in the middle at the end of the night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Responding to people's houses for stuff. But in most cases, you don't have to pull your firearm for those because no one's under threat of severe harm or yeah.
So we had a string of bank robberies near where I live um, last year, and that guy was apprehended without a single shot being fired. Um, he had a gun at the bank, but when the cops actually cornered him, he didn't have his gun with him, so they just took him in. At least from what I read in the newspaper, and I could be misremembering this. So the cops brought him in without having to fire a single shot. They didn't confront him in the bank. They didn't get there in time. Of course, this is leading away from away from our
Yeah.
whole
I was about
tabletop
to
character discussion.
I was about to come up with another. I was about to have another story, and I'm like, wait.
No, no, we could finish this story about
No,
cops,
so,
and
but
I mean
we had
we're 9 minutes in out of a 10 minute section, so
wow. So in my local where I grew up, I don't live there anymore, but it's still I live close by to where I grew up. We had the schools and half the town shut down because a man with a firearm was seen, and then he was seen crossing crossing the high school property. The local school resource officer saw him, locked down half the town, and when they found him, hopefully this doesn't get us demonetized. Oh wait,
we're not monetized yet.
this
What
is
is
pretty
that?
much what he had. It is an airsoft gun. This is what they found on him.
A
He
toy for adults.
he had apparently possibly threatened somebody with it, but it ended up being an airsoft gun. And I can
Ow.
tell you that I have some friends who live in Massachusetts and some people who are not friends, but I've spoken to some cops down there. And a lot of the robberies that have happened, not necessarily using airsoft guns because they're plastic, but a lot of them are happening using pellet guns, BB
Yep.
guns, because there's nothing on it that they have to color or take a plastic piece off or anything like that. And yeah, and the front of a, you know, between .177 caliber and .22 caliber are close enough that at quick glance, if you're robbing a liquor store, no one wants to take that risk. But
Point
anyways,
point 177 caliber is a BB gun, by the way.
yes, I'm sorry.
Um, for
BB and
anyone
pellet
who's never
gun.
actually looked at the Daisy Rider in Walmart, um, which you can still buy. At least
Yep,
at my local Walmart, you can get one. Uh, so we're at 11 minutes. Uh, let's get back to this topic in the next episode. Does that sound good to you?
sounds good to me.
I keep looking to see if he's nodding or something at me. I'm not used to this forward camera yet. As a reminder, anybody who knows anybody at the WB who would be able to hear a movie pitch, I'd love to pitch something to you guys for a DC show, a movie, actually. Um, just throwing that out there like I do every episode until somebody answers. So there we go. Next episode, we're actually going to get into use-based character creation.
And we are here to talk to you about all things geek in a hopefully positive format. Unlike last episode, where we kind of briefly went off talking about more real life, regular stuff, but that's okay because we're just here to talk, have fun, exchange ideas, and for me, drink coffee. Um, but
I need more water in my cup.
all right, we can do that between our episodes. And well, our creative director here, Mr. Bees himself, what's our topic for this episode?
So last episode, if you saw it, and even if you didn't, we started talking about how game masters make characters versus how players make characters. And game masters are much more use focused. And we diverged very quickly onto police officers because I was talking about how I made up the character, which you guys may have seen in our earlier episodes, of Larry McCooperson, Officer Larry McCooperson on the fly. And I knew what stats he needed, which is where we diverged. And
Yep,
so I just boosted those. I said, okay, he's going to be 2D and everything because we use the D6 system. He's going to be
yep.
average and everything. And then he's going to be boosted in like 4 skills. And that's all. And then I'm giving him an average strength of 3D. Um, and I did that fast. That's all I put into it. I didn't give it any more thought than that at the time during the session. And that's use-based character creation. What do I need this character to do? What do I want him to be able to do? What do I need him to be able to do? And that's how game masters make NPCs. And once you're good at it, once you practiced it for a bit, which you usually do in session, and the first time you're going to be like, and you sit there with a blank character sheet, throw some stats on it real quick, and so you remember what you wrote down. And that's it. That's what you do. Well, if you take this and apply it to character creation for a player, what it gives you a huge advantage because you actually start figuring out what you want your character to be able to do inside the game. And then you go and build your backstory. So, like I said, I've been playing City of Heroes. It just got its license back from NCSoft, so now City of Heroes Homecoming is fully licensed. So you can go play it for free. It's a great game. And they're not paying us or anything because they don't make any money. But it is a good game. It's fun to play. And there's so much variety that I've been talking to people because I've been playing for years. I played when the game was out originally 20 years ago, so did Buse. And people ask me how to make characters because I'm okay at it. I'm not great. I'm not a master of it. I can't tell you the ideal way to make every character, but I keep giving people the same advice. Instead of going to try and make this ideal character, figure out what you want to be able to do in the group. Because there's so much variety. Just because you're playing a tank doesn't mean you have to be the most indestructible tank ever. If you're playing solo, then you just set your solo power level to the point where you can do stuff. where you're not facing the biggest, baddest enemies in the game all the time. You don't always have to do those missions. That's not how solo play works. If you're playing in a group, there's going to be people there to buff you and heal you. So you don't have to be this indestructible rock, which is the character I play. You also can be the indestructible rock if you want to. What are you looking? But then I give up a lot of attack force, not only power, but also the number of attacks I can do is lowered because of the choices I made. But I'm very happy with my character because it plays exactly the way I want it to play. Now that's true in video games, but it's also true when you're sitting at the table. Okay, you want to play I don't know, in D&D, you want to be a damage dealer. Okay, do you want to be a melee damage dealer in like up close and personal, or do you want to fight from range? If you want to fight from range, do you want to fight with spells or with your bow and arrow or your gun? Because it's not only D&D, it's also tabletop RPGs encompass anything you can imagine, you can create a system for, or you can use an existing system to play out that storyline you imagined. So, where's your focus in the Star Wars D6 RPG? It was originally a Star Wars RPG. We've rebuilt it a number of times to cover different scenarios, but in Star Wars, I would often tell people to make an all-around character for your first character so you can experience. And that's the other thing is you want to experience different things, but and find out what you actually like doing. But in Star Wars, it's specifically just like watching the original three movies or the Lucas Six. There's times when the characters need to be great at combat on the ground and great at combat in a vehicle, and those are two different skill sets. So you might highly focus on one or highly focus on the other and lose ability in the like you might be great at ship combat and lousy at ground combat, or you might be great at ground combat and lousy at ship combat, or you could be average in everything. Game systems like this tend to average out that way. So yeah, that's my main point. Not only that, in tabletop RPGs, you might focus completely on role playing, especially with a D6 system, but you can even do it in 5e D&D. Your focus might be entirely on your role-playing skills so that you can make all the checks in a conversation to be a great persuader. You might talk your way out of all your situations, which is very possible to do. We have got a couple of characters in the game I'm running now that can talk their way out of situations quite well. Crenshaw, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Crenshaw talks his way out of most of his problems. And if when he can't do that, he gives them a psychic blast.
Whereas my character is not as good as Crenshaw, but fairly decent. I just give him a blast with my fist.
A fistic blast. This sounds
Exactly.
awful. Anyway, you have anything to add up to this point? You have anything to add up to this point, Buse? Or
So no, not really. But no,
all
but
right,
like no, but all joking aside, yeah. When it comes like Bees is right. Like especially if you're your first time playing, like even if you're playing something like D&D, which I haven't looked at the fifth edition system, I kind of feel like I should.
probably should at
If we
some point. It's really a superhero game at this point. I mean,
if we
fantasy,
if we
but
were
it's a superhero game.
if we were monetized and making money, I'd use it as a tax write-off, but we're not. So, uh, but when it
If
comes to
D&D
at
wants to
least
sponsor us, we'll have to think about that.
if we if I was playing on a when I'm playing on a D6 system, even a lot of my regular characters tend to be fairly middle of the road. Most of my attributes, and then maybe have one attribute which is professional level, and everything else being above average with one average. Because you can't be below average in D6 as a regular character, uh,
Well, not as a human.
not as a human. Uh, but the nice thing about that is some of those characters, especially when you have people leave games, they come in clutch because you might not normally be the tank of the group, but if someone can't make it or moves away, oh, look, well, you have
Yeah,
the next highest. You might not be the scout or the rogue of the group, but hey, you have the next highest. as a GM, when I have a character who participates with the with the group, which I typically name after a good friend of mine, uh, at least in Star Wars, you know who I mean.
I know nothing. I know nothing. I see nothing.
But yeah, I typically will have them be 3D and everything, which is above average, but it's the base level, and then I just build off of there because no matter what, he is capable of having a chance at succeeding most at most normal average roles. He's not below average in anything, or he's not at average in anything. He's got a little bit of knowledge and everything, so it makes it easier to just build the character up in that particular thing, which I did in one of my games where I ended up playing. Okay, I got some time to ramble a little bit. So, long story short, I played a game with a friend of ours, and Bees was in this game as well briefly. He, lived far away, so he wasn't a regular member, but he would join us occasionally.
Hmm.
And we actually, for a while, we started swapping out who was running the game. So we would have our player character leave the group for a while that person actually GM'd. And the character I brought in, middle of the road, and I ended up having a weird, wide selection of skills that I improved over time because I filled in a bit for everybody because I was the third best pilot, but we needed a pilot and co-pilot. So when
Hmm.
the top pilot went, I moved in. I was ended up being the third best fighter for the same reason. Everything I was like second or third best in, and I could take a hit, and it just worked. It actually worked out well to the point that sometimes they asked if I could keep the character in while I was GMing, which I didn't do. But he was also he also wasn't belligerent like a lot of my characters were. He was actually somewhat likable, uh,
That
and
helps.
yeah. Well, he was. Funny thing was, I was playing like a teenager. He was like 16 or 18 or whatever, depending upon when, and it was just a fun time. I just needed something I could throw together real quick, and I'm like, well, I've used this character in some stories I've written before, so why don't I just throw him in there and boop,
He
and that
was
was it.
17 and he was far from in between. It was gaming time in northern Michigan. Wait, they're not in Michigan.
Northern New England.
There you go.
But yeah, so I highly actually recommend it because even in D&D, to some degree, I don't
Hmm.
know about the new system, but even with the old third edition, 3.5 edition, you could somewhat do that. It was called being a bard or a rogue. You could be because especially with a bard, they could wear plate armor. They could, or at least chain armor. Um, they had a decent amount of skills, and they had some magical abilities. You choose some, like, with their songs, you choose something semi-offensive and something more defensive or buff wise or whatever, just as you're kind of going up and collecting your songs and abilities, and their buffers on their own. It worked fine as a middle of the road character, and they could fill in. And when it comes to, speaking of bards, if we talk about, like, if we're talking about MMOs like EverQuest, at least at low levels, because EverQuest, every character is specialized once you get up to high levels because they're specifically meant for it. But when you're talking about pre-level 20, there was your group could be made up of, your group didn't have to be ideal to do stuff unless you were running actual, like, dungeons, and most of the time even with those, as long as you were just taking care of the trash and even some of the named, you were fine. And just, you could fill in just depending upon what you did. I've tanked as a bard many times in lower level EQ.
Got
I
all
have
these memories of Crushbone coming back to me now.
I have
It's
tanked
all
as a
coming
rogue.
back. It's all
That was
coming
not
back to me
fun,
now.
but I have done it. It just, it's just
Yeah,
like
I've tanked as a
character.
rogue in it. EQ.
I've done it. I had a really good couple of healers. It helps to have a
So
druid, two clerics.
So the point I want to make here is you start with, and let's try and make it before we run out of our self-imposed time limit here. You start with what you actually want to do with your character, and then you work backwards. So if you're great at, I don't know, let's go back to Star Wars D6. If you're great at, you know, blasters or piloting or driving or whatever, you once you have your stats all set out and what you want your character to be able to do, then you go backwards and figure out what would my character have had to go through in life. Where do they pick up these skills? Why are they good at that? If you're a doctor, how did you become a doctor? If you're an engineer, how did you become an engineer? If you're a Jedi, how did you become a Jedi? How did you become a bounty hunter? Where did you pick up your skills with your blaster? Maybe you're a bounty hunter who's not great with blasters, but you're great with tracking people and setting up traps that they would fall into. Where did you get these skills? And as you answer the questions of how you got these skills, now you've got a complete character story, or a very complete, not a maybe not 100% complete. Maybe you haven't added in. Maybe your GM will come back and be like, "Look, I need some plot hooks here. I need some characters that can give you plot hooks. So you need to add more stuff in." But or if you don't, I will, which is something I've said repeatedly over the years. Um, but if you build your character that way, then you're always going to have something you can do in your group. And group makeup matters a lot less in RPG and tabletop RPGs than it does in MMO RPGs. Um, so yeah, give it a shot. Next time you're making a new character, instead of starting from some cool idea you have, start with what you want to be able to do, and then work backwards. It works great in character creation for stories as well. Um, in one fantasy story I was writing, I needed a character who was a um, okay, forget that part. I'm going to tell you about the two main characters because it can go all sorts of places, and we're at 15 minutes, so I'll do this quick. I decided I was going to make these two twins that were min-maxed, two elven twins. One was a warrior, one is a magic user, and they're completely min-maxed to be as good as you could possibly start inside of a D6 the D6 role-playing system I came up with, as good as they could possibly be, which means they're awful at a lot of other things. And I had to go through and figure out story-wise what I wanted them to be average at and okay at, and what I was willing to let them be actually awful at. And in doing that, I came up with these two characters and then explaining I started with the stats. I explained how they got those stats, and that's how I got my two starting characters for the story. And I made them brothers. That ties them together, and that leads into a novel I've completely plotted out and haven't finished writing. But it it worked out that way that I ended up with these two characters that played off each other incredibly well. And yeah, starting with their stats. What did I want them to be able to do in the party? And that led to these two guys, Jack and John, who are just polar opposites, but would kill for each other, would die for each other, because they're family and they actually love each other the way family is supposed to. Okay, are we good for 17:24 right now?
Sounds good. All right. Well, I will just say in general, we're happy to have you along. Hope you'll
Yep.
join us for our next partial episode, and we'll see you, truckers.
Hey, one last thing.
And what is our topic for this short episode?
Our topic is our second favorite Star Trek episode. That's right, our second favorite Star Trek episode. Because, well, you know your friends when you have the same favorite Star Trek episode.
Especially when your friend introduced you to that
Yes,
favorite Star Trek episode.
yes.
And in this case, Bees introduced me to it.
And he's the trucker. We're both truckers, but he's more of a Trekkie than I am.
And yeah, I hadn't really gotten into uh, Deep Space Nine, and I kind
What
of
a
started
series.
watching it, and I think I didn't watch it until after all he did. And we've talked about it on a previous episode, but that episode may not be released yet, and this will be released before then. Uh, But long story short, uh, in the pale moonlight, the final speech in the pale moonlight is all bees had me watch, and that made me want
Avery
to
Brooks, man.
watch. Yeah, Avery Brooks is fantastic. I
Yeah.
remember him from, what was it, Hunter, back in the day? I
I don't know. I know him from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I don't know if you've heard of that series.
don't know. But yeah, he's a fantastic actor, and that one speech at the end of it, that made me kind of watch Deep Space Nine. Like I
Mm.
was going to eventually, anyways. And I think I didn't start until after you had shown that to me. But if I had started beforehand, I was having a hard time. But knowing that was coming
Yeah.
made me go through.
The series had a hard time finding its feet when it first started.
But
That
so
didn't
did Next
stop there.
Generation.
Yeah, that didn't stop. Most TV shows do. Very few TV
Hmm.
shows start off strong and finish strong. I can't even think of one. Anyway, I'm sure, given time, not off the top of my head, I could think of one or two, but
Game of Thrones.
I didn't watch
I'm
it.
kidding.
Um,
I'm kidding. Anyways,
boy, that
it
ending, I
ended.
don't know if anybody would agree with you on the ending.
Oh,
So, yeah. Uh, but even saying, Deep Space Nine didn't start off strong, rewatching it, some of the best episodes are in the first season. So amazing. The first appearance of Garrick, for instance, just fantastic. He's a Cardassian spy who's stuck on the station after the Cardassians, who are the main enemies of the series, uh, leave the Bajor system. Anyway, not to get too bogged down into it. So, since we both have the same favorite episode, which I highly recommend, season 6, episode 19, In the Pale Moonlight, um, Fuse, why don't you tell them what your second favorite episode is? Because you already know what my second favorite episode is.
it would almost be a tie, but Drumhead in Next Generation
Mm.
edges it out. So for those of you who haven't watched uh, this episode, or maybe just need a quick refresher, Drumhead.
Most people don't know TV show episodes by the title.
A lot of people who watch Trek
A
do,
lot of
but
Trekkies do, yeah, but I hate that. And we're diverging. You're not going to believe this. We're going down a rabbit hole. I hate it when I'm watching a commentary and people are listing off episodes, and that's all they say is they name the episode. And I'm like, I don't know the names of the episodes. Like I was watching a Castle. Was it Castle? It was something with Nathan Fillion in it, and he's in an interview, and it was him and a director or something, and they're going back and forth and just naming off the names of episodes, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel lost. So tell us about Drumhead on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
so long story short, the episode pretty much begins with like like I think part of the exchange program. There was a Klingon on board, and there was an issue which happened on board, which looked like sabotage. They found out that he was selling stuff to the Romulans, so they assumed that he had something to do with the sabotage, but he couldn't have done it alone.
Hmm.
And during the investigation, because of how deep it went, they brought in this Starfleet admiral out of retirement, Nora Satie, whose father was known as this great legendary judge, and she is like known as like one of the greatest investigators in Federation history. She has her own team, and she's pretty much considered equal to Picard when it comes to doing this, because Starfleet said you have to treat the captain of the ship this is happening on as an equal, which she didn't like, but she was okay with Picard at first, and they start questioning people. And Picard notices that they're questioning people a little harder than he'd like, but he kind of lets it go. Worf is all on board, and they start going through, and then they can't quite find anyone who directly worked with this Klingon, but they are seeing all these links and making all these links and stuff, and in the end, they're questioning this one guy, a Vulcan, Simon Tarses. Yes, I know the names of these people. It's my second favorite episode.
I'm willing to guess you've watched this episode one time?
Yeah, just once,
Two
or
times.
maybe six. But
200 times.
anyways, we find out that he lied about being part Vulcan. He's actually part Romulan, and he lied just so that he could get into Starfleet
How dare
because
he?
because he thought he would be discriminated against because Romulans are kind of at war with the Federation.
Only kind of.
Anyways, she because of that, the admiral feels that things are going even deeper, and then because Picard is like, no, no, you're kind of getting to the point of a witch hunt. She then accuses Picard because, well, you used to be a Borg and you've done all of these things over the course of time, things that maybe people looked at as a bit more innocent, but you broke the prime directive here, you gave up secrets here, whether it was, even though it was like an accident or everybody knows what happened, especially us as viewers because we watched the episode.
Doesn't
uh
she know he did this in the name of good television?
exactly. uh but and and it kind of goes through, and that's pretty much it. And the you know am I giving stuff about the episode away? Yes. Is it still worth watching? Yes. And the reason I like it is because it's one of those it's one of those episodes which kind of it almost I don't watch Law and Order, but based on the way it's been described to me, this felt like an episode of Law and Order: The Next Generation,
Hmm.
pretty much, because we
Maybe you
had
should
kind of
watch Law
like
and Order.
a semi-legal, like a legal drama portion of it, as well as the investigatory part of it, and just Picard gave one of his really good speeches at the end of the episode, and it was great. So that's my second favorite episode.
Hmm.
What's yours?
It's going to sound like a cop out, but my second favorite episode is the very next episode after In the Pale Moonlight. It's called His Way. It is the story of how Odo, the shapeshifting outsider, finally wins the heart of Kira Nerys, the Bajoran ex-terrorist turned military major. And it's the introduction of the character Vic Fontaine, who was, I want to say, was Moondog in the Gidget movies, I think, but you can look in IMDb for Vic Fontaine from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You can just Google that and see who the actor was. But he's from that. His heyday was in that time period, and he's a lounge singer in a Vegas act on the Hollow Suite. Um, Brand new program. He's more human than any other hologram that's ever been made. Blah blah blah, and he's got additional abilities that other holograms don't have because he's semi sentient or more advanced, or they never really get into it. And I'm glad they don't because it's part of the sci fantasy experience. And he's just fantastic in every episode you see him in. Um, well trained actor, lots of experience under his belt. He's the oldest cast member at that point, and he wasn't a full cast member. He was a guest star, but he was in a lot of episodes. And this is season six.
Mm-hmm.
This series only lasted seasons. But what I liked about the episode was, as much as I enjoy Vic Fontaine, and I do, what a voice that guy has. And singing all those songs from the Rat Pack era, talking about Sam and Sammy and Dino and Frankie. Actually, I think he just calls him Frank. Anyway, what I really liked about the episode had nothing to do with Vic Fontaine. Well, it does. He's part of the plot, but it's Odo coming out of his shell. And this guy he stands in, this shapeshifter, this outsider, stands in for every geek guy who's ever tried to woo a girl and didn't know how to do it. Every outsider who doesn't know the rules of how to just be cool and relaxed and what love is all about. It's probably the best episode in all of television that talks about what relationships are really about. If not the best, it's in the top 100. If not, I'd put it in the top 10, but I haven't seen every episode that ever came out of television. Um, and all Vic, and he goes to Vic for advice, and Vic's the one who just teaches him to relax, have a good time. It's not about who else she's interested in, what other relationships she's been in the past, what other guys she's seen. Guys, it's about being yourself. And if you like each other, great. And if you don't, that's fine. We've mentioned this in passing here, but most relationships are really about finding somebody you like talking to. Because most of the time in a relationship, as my married friend here will tell you, is spent talking.
My wife is my best friend.
Yeah. Um, find somebody you like talking to and could talk to forever. And that's not how you feel when you're, getting all the hormones of teenagerhood coming into your body, of adolescence coming into your body, and you see this girl and she's so pretty and smart and funny, and she says all these things and they're amazing, and wow, I feel incredibly crushing on her because my heart is going a million miles an hour when I see her, and I don't even know what to say or how to say it, and I can't think in this moment. Which is pretty much how Odo felt whenever he was around Kira or Nerys or whatever you want to call her, and so the Major. So yeah, Vic gets him past that. And as a guy who's taken a few cues in my younger days from television on how to woo a woman, for the most part, don't do that. Television is not about real life. Television is no. Because you think it'd be cool to be the say anything guy holding up your boombox outside, or you're not. You're just an
More
idiot.
important, don't give other people advice on how to woo women based off of television. As my wife will also tell you, when I gave advice to one of my friends who was trying to woo her before I did.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, um, it's not about the big gesture. Um, relationships are less about that for the most part. There's exceptions than they are about having somebody you want to spend time with, that you enjoy being around. And this episode, this is the one TV episode that I would recommend to people who actually want to take advice from television on how to get out of the friend zone, become more than just friends, is relax, be cool around her, and learn how to be yourself around the girl, and vice versa. You don't have to, girls, you don't have to. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but so many television shows tell girls to hide their crazy. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to hide whatever you're scared of the guy finding out. Either he's going to accept you for who you are, or he's not. Guys, same thing. Either she's going, you don't have to hide you're crazy either. Either she's going to accept you for who you are, or she's not. It's not the end of the world. There are other fish in the sea, and if this isn't the right one, that's okay.
Would you rather be in a long-term relationship where you're having to hide who you are? Because that becomes really stressful after a while, from personal experience.
Yeah,
You
you, yeah,
you want
no,
someone who you like B said, you just want someone you can be yourself with. And you know what? We're all a little bit crazy. So oftentimes our crazies can complement each other as long as we know it's there.
yeah. So that's my second favorite episode. Fuse the second favorite episode. Um, you want to wrap it? These 15-minute segments go by so fast. And to think we
They
were going to try
do.
and keep this to 10.
Yeah, I
Um,
I think I think up to 20
20.
is fine. But
Anything you want to
no,
add? I,
only thing I want to add is I mentioned briefly that it was close to a three-way tie. I like the more legal oriented episodes just because, as Bees knows, that's kind of part of my personality and something I wish I had kind of gone into a bit more in my real life. But Measure of a Man, which is Data on trial as to whether or not he is a living being
hmm
or sentient being, and Author, which in Voyager is it's similar to Measure of a Man, but it is whether or not Voyager's doctor, who is a hologram, has legal rights over his actual created works because he created holodeck programs and people, I think somebody tried to steal credit for them because, well, he's just a hologram. So yada yada yada. And yeah, so that I'm just gonna add those in just because I can. And I recommend, in general, I recommend many episodes of at least the newer, not new Trek, but the mid Treks. So the Next Generation
The
Treks.
three
I
seven series, or do you want to throw Enterprise in there too?
Enterprise I enjoyed, but I understand why some people didn't. Uh, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine are probably
They're probably the
Strange New
two
World.
best Star Trek series.
Strange New Worlds is getting up there for me. I
Hmm.
love Lower Decks as well, but I Next Generation and Deep Space Nine are very good. They both start out slow, but they pick up really well, and they've got like decent moral messaging in them as well, which is somewhat important for me. Uh, but yeah, I would highly recommend them. I'd recommend most Trek. Bees and I may disagree a little bit on some of these, but even a lot of the newer Trek, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks. I just finished the first season of Prodigy. All of these are pretty decent. Um, and yeah, have fun with them.
All right.
But in
On
general, you like
on
what
that
you
note,
like. We are going to drop off this mini episode. So,
we're here to talk to you today about all the geeky, wonderful things that we love, and hopefully you love too. And since we're actually getting some of these out relatively close to after we record them, we figured we'd talk about some recent news. Not that that's ever stopped us in the past, you just don't know it because we haven't gotten them out that fast. You will know it eventually. So, the cast for Fantastic Four, the MCU edition, has been announced along with hints at the possible plot, or at least the time period they want to set it in. And we figured we'd talk about it and try to keep it positive, which is not going to be as easy for me as it is for my good friend over here and his good friend on his shoulder,
hello,
Grogu.
Grogu. And actually, funny enough, it's actually appropriate for this discussion.
All right. Why is Grogu? Why is Grogu? I feel like I was channeling the Swedish chef there. Why is Grogu? Holy flying mattresses. Let's try that again, shall we? And scene. Why is Grogu? I did it again. I did it again! I quit, you win. Why is
Okay.
Grogu appropriate for a discussion on the MCU's Fantastic Four?
Because the Mandalorian star, Pedro Pascal, has been announced as our new Reed Richards.
Did you say Pedro Pascal?
I did say Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal is going to play Reed Richards?
Pedro Pascal is going to play Reed Richards.
That's amazing.
Yes. And so somewhat replacing, I guess, not really because it was alternate, whatever, but John Krasinski, who played him in Multiverse of Madness,
Mm.
which I understand it being changed, whether because if John Krasinski didn't want it, that's perfectly fine. And even if he did want it, if Disney wants to change that actor, that is completely their right. But I would have loved to have seen John Krasinski play him in a
Me too. I
full
like
length
John Krasinski
full
a
length
lot.
movie. I just started watching The Office,
Mm.
and wow, considering watching The Office and having watched Jack Ryan,
Yeah,
that man has a range. He has a very good range for an actor.
most actors do have a decent range.
Yeah, I'm used to a lot of some. We try to stay positive, but we'll just say that there's a lot of modern actors who I feel don't have very much range.
A lot of
Uh,
actors also get typecast. Like if a studio knows that, if you make John Krasinski the funny, doofy guy with the heart of gold, it's going to sell a TV show. They're going to keep making John Krasinski. I don't know if that's the fairest description of Jim ever, but he was a little doofy and he was funny. And even with Dwight, he tended to have a heart of gold, that character that he played. He may have been pushing Dwight's buttons a lot, but Dwight was also subconsciously pushing, what's his character's name in The Office there?
Jim?
Jim's buttons. Yes.
Subconscious, and I'm only into episode 5, but I don't think Dwight was subconsciously pushing Jim's buttons. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of consciousness there, especially when he's taking a ruler to push the edges of books back onto Jim's desk.
Yeah, but
But
a lot of what he did came from who he was more than who than trying. He wasn't trying to annoy Jim as much as he was just. He's this weird little man in his weird little world, which I can really identify with, and things have to be just so with him. And I know a lot of people like that aren't
I,
like OCD necessarily, certainly not full blown OCD, but those tendencies are there in most people. Um, and I see that a lot. Like there's this
at the
guy at
risk of
work.
turning, oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh,
No, I'll let you finish the sentence.
there's this guy at work who can't. We have telephones, and they have cords, and he cannot abide with a twisted telephone cord. So he would,
Yep.
if he saw a twisted telephone cord, and if you guys remember telephone cords from back in the day when telephones were just telephones, they still exist, I swear. Um, it's very easy for the cord to get twisted. So when other people wanted to annoy him, I never actually did this. I was tempted a few times when he got on my case, but I didn't. That's a horrible way. Pulling a prank on somebody is not the right way to do conflict resolution.
Resolution.
But if he was just annoying people and they didn't want to, say, hey, look, can you give me a break here? Let me know why this is so important to you because it's driving me up a wall. Other people would just take the telephone cords, and knowing he was about to come into the room, they would just twist them like crazy and plug him back into the phone. Unplug, twist it like crazy, plug it back in, and it would take him 5 or 10 minutes to get all the cords untwisted, which only took a couple of seconds to twist up. So yeah, and I know people like Dwight. Not as bad as Dwight. He's exaggerated for comedic effect, but yeah, and he was driving Jim up a wall. So Jim drove him back up a wall. And it really came across to me in the episodes of The Office that I watched, was about 5 of the first 5 seasons or so. Binge watching is not a great way to watch an episodic television show. It really seemed to me like that Dwight wasn't trying to annoy Jim as often as Jim was trying to annoy Dwight, but Dwight was annoying Jim far more often than Jim was annoying Dwight. I'm not going to
But
say that 5 times fast.
at the risk of turning this into an episode of episode where we talk about The Office, which we can do in the future, hopefully
Or
after
we
I've watched more than 5 episodes. Um,
Boy, I'm glad I didn't get into too many specifics there.
but yeah, so we have Pedro Pascal, who's playing our fearless leader, Reed Richards. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if he's a fearless leader. I didn't do much Fantastic Four reading. Uh,
Ah.
then we have Vanessa Kirby, who I personally, well, no, I don't personally know her, but my experience with her acting has mainly been the Mission Impossible movies, which I thought she
Mm-hmm.
was decent in. Uh, wasn't as big of a role, so I have nothing to really judge her by, but I'm told she's a pretty decent actress. That's great. Then we have Joseph Quinn, who I know mainly from Stranger Things, coming in as Johnny Storm, as a younger Johnny Storm, as opposed to, it seems like they're going with an older Reed Richards by choosing Pedro Pascal, because Pedro Pascal is my age, or a couple years older.
8 years
Uh,
old.
but, and then I don't want to butcher his name, and I have not seen him in anything that I am aware of.
And Buse
Uh,
absolutely assures me, that Joseph Quinn is not related in any way, shape, or form to the medicine woman. No, not even a giggle.
I'm
All
giggling.
right.
Okay, so
Maybe if he gets his doctorate,
okay,
then he'll be Dr. Quinn. So
There we
while
go.
he's looking this
There we
up
go.
to get that name, oh, go ahead.
Eben Moss Buckruck. And I apologize in advance if I am butchering his name.
I'm
Uh,
sure we are.
but yeah, and I don't think I know him from anything, but I can take a quick look at IMDb to see if I'm a liar. But that's what we know about the cast so far. We have a lot of people who there's rumors coming out about possibly Doom being in it, and if he is, who's they might still be looking for someone to play him. I know that Ben Mendelsohn has specifically stated he'd like to come back into the MCU and play the role, but I doubt that they would actually do that. I wouldn't mind it though, because he's a good actor. You know who Ben Mendelsohn is, right?
Not off the top of my head.
So he played Talon in Captain Marvel and plays bad guys in a lot of movies. He was in Rogue. He played the bad guy in Rogue One. Um,
Hmm. Good
but
actor.
yeah, he's a very good actor. I would. He'd be a good Doom. He'd be an older Doom, just like we have an older.
So one of the problems I already have with this cast is Ben and Reed are not close in age because Reed
Oh,
and Ben went to college together in the original comics.
what? How old is Evan?
12. No, I don't know.
Now I have to look. Now I have to look. Well, I'm on his
He's
IMDb
got to
page.
know. Um,
I've got to know.
he's got to know. Uh, yeah. We're 11 minutes in, and
Um, they are about the same age, the actors.
really, they don't look it.
Pedro Pascal is 45. This guy is oh no, not 45. He's 48. The other guy's 45. That's within a
Oh,
couple of years of each other.
okay. I've only seen the one picture, so.
Yeah, he looks younger, but Pedro Pascal is given into his gray
Mm,
fairly well. This guy, I'm not saying he hasn't, but he's kind of
he may
like
not have
me,
any
where
gray.
like I've got some gray hairs here and there. I'm
Hmm.
43, but I don't have as many
Nobody
gray
loves you when you're
hairs.
43, and you still act like you're in freshman year.
But I don't have as many gray hairs as even some of my friends do.
That's
Um,
true.
so it all depends. Some people think I'm in my 30s, to which I say, thank you.
All right. So that concern is now nullified. That's good. But um, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in general, I'm willing to give it a shot. As I've said, I'm not as big of a fan of Fantastic Four, but I wasn't a big fan of Iron Man. I wasn't
Who was?
the biggest fan of. I actually wasn't a big fan of Captain America
Name one
until
great Iron Man story before the MCU started.
Extremis came out after the MCU started, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. And I didn't even, from what I've heard, it wasn't that great of a story. Um, I never really followed Iron Man. He was in a couple Avengers comics I owned. I didn't really follow the Avengers. I was just like many people of my generation. I was an X-Men, Spider-Man. When it came to Marvel, I was X-Men, Spider-Man. I got into New
Mm-hmm.
Warriors a bit. I read some Punisher, but Fantastic Four, nah. Avengers, nah. The only Avengers comics I read had Beast in them because he was
So
one of my favorite Marvel characters.
that's one of the things about uh, these characters is even if one of the things about Iron Man, one of the things about Captain America, uh, it's a litmus test. As a fan of comic books, somebody who's read them, name a great story that almost everyone can name with those characters in it. And before you actually attempt that challenge, name one great X-Men story.
Age of Apocalypse, I actually enjoyed. Phoenix Saga, Dark Phoenix Saga, because those are two separate ones. Fight me
Mm-hmm.
on it in the comments if you want. Uh, let's
Please don't. You
see,
will lose. They are two very different storylines.
Inferno. I can actually continue going on.
Okay, you're an X-Men fan. I'll grant you that. Name one great Spider-Man storyline.
Maximum Carnage, uh, Round Robin,
Ooh,
Clone
I wouldn't say that
Saga.
was great, but yeah.
Oh, I loved Round Robin.
Oh, I
Now,
loved it
grant
too, but most non-Spider-Man fans wouldn't mention that one. I was thinking of the Alien symbiote storyline.
that's I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Okay. I can't do it with Iron Man. Couldn't do it with Captain America.
nope.
Name one great Fantastic Four storyline.
Uh, I'm assuming G- Galactus is coming in.
The Coming
The
of
you know with
Galactus is the name of the storyline. Yes.
yep. Uh, that
Boom,
is
you did it.
yeah, and that was like an early one.
Issue
But that
50,
one's but that's also been done in
I think.
but that's also been done on heck. It was the second movie did it too. So if I
Hmm.
didn't know about it before Rise of the Silver Surfer, I learned about it there. Um,
That's
also,
fair.
they also did it in I think the Fantastic Four cartoons. They
Mm-hmm.
also did it in the Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did any sort of research on it, you'd realize, oh, this is coming from Fantastic Four originally. So I know it, but it's because they've done it in other media as well. Just like a lot of the
So
X-Men stuff they did in other media as well.
that's because they tell their best stories in other media.
Fair enough.
Um,
Actually, I think
yeah,
they did Maximum Carnage in other media as well, specifically video games.
yeah. There was a video game named Maximum Carnage for the what
Hmm.
was that, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo,
Yep.
or was it after that? I don't remember.
No, it was Genesis and
The point
Super
I'm,
Nintendo.
it's called the Q rating. How well the public knows who these characters are. It's their Q rating. So somebody like Yantu, I think his name was from Guardians of the Galaxy, the blue
Yondu.
guy with the red hair.
Yondu.
Yandu, that's it.
Do the do.
Yandu in Guardians of the Galaxy is not the Yandu from the comics, not even close.
No.
Um, but that didn't stop people from enjoying the character and loving how they changed. They probably, excuse me, they probably don't even know that they changed him from the comics, but it has nothing to do with Yandu from the comics, which is fine. It worked out. Uh, you're never going to be able to do it. We've talked about this before. You're never going to have a perfect one-to-one, and uh, yeah, we're at 17 minutes though. What else do you want to say about the Fantastic Four?
I am looking forward to it with anticipation and trepidation because
Mhm.
I want Marvel to continue to succeed even after Endgame. While I've not been the biggest fan post Endgame, there have been some stuff I've liked. Amazingly enough, even though I felt it wasn't made for me, I've said this before, but possibly on episodes that didn't get released yet. I enjoyed Miss Marvel when I went back and watched it. I was surprised.
Mhm.
Um, Iman Vellani, I think is her name.
I'll
Again,
let it be.
sorry,
Close enough.
but she plays a very likable character. There's been other media I have not liked Miss Marvel in, but she was a very likable character. The story, while I wasn't the big fan of, was brought to life in a way that was fun, exciting to watch, and made me want to see the next episode most of the time.
All that's very important in a TV show.
And I can say that there have been other Marvel TV shows which I was looking forward to that I watched the day they came out that I was not quite feeling that way. I felt I
Yeah.
had to watch the next episode because I'm a geek and it's what I'm required to do.
It's one of my compulsions. I must finish the series, Master.
Um,
And so yeah,
I
like
used to feel that way, but I've been let down too many times. I am not looking forward to the Fantastic Four. If you guys have been watching, then you know what I would have done with the Fantastic Four. And what basic
Actually, that
requirements I would
episode may not
start
have
with.
been released.
What?
That episode may not have been. Oh, wait, no, we did release that
Yeah, we
episode. Never
released
mind.
that one.
That was like
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
From the time of recording, and then, well, anyway,
Yeah.
we'll leave the maths out there. Uh, you know what I would have done? You know what I think is important? The Reed Richards and Ben Grimm were heroes long before they got superpowers, and I see no evidence of Marvel taking that into consideration. They're the MCU taking that into consideration when making these characters. I don't think they're going to get the characters to resemble or feel like the characters from the comics like they did with Iron Man in the movies is not Iron Man from the comics, but he's got the same kind of character that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were trying to create is very similar to the character that Robert Downey Jr. portrayed on screen. They got his essence right. And since Endgame, I don't think Marvel has gotten the essence of the character right in any of their MCU films or TV shows. We could argue that, but we're coming to the end of the time here. 20 minutes is the time limit we set for ourselves.
Yep. So for right. And for those of you who do watch our 4 to 8 regular viewers, I would like to ask this. Yes,
tell your friends.
Tell your friends, and also in the comments, let us know if you prefer this shorter format, because we're doing it to hopefully have more people be willing to watch, because sometimes a 1 to 2 hour block of time is a bit much for some people. I still plan on releasing all the ones we record in one night as an actual podcast type thing, so you can watch it all at the same time if you want. But let us know if you prefer these smaller episodes, because we're here for you. We want you to enjoy it, and we do also want to grow, though. So let us know. And with that, Bees, I'll let you do your normal if you like.
Oh yeah. If anybody knows how to contact the WB or Time Warner Discovery, whatever they're calling themselves these days, I would love to pitch a movie to David Zaslav or whoever listens to movie pitches over there for the DC Universe. Or, well, not their DC Universe. I have an amazing pitch, all prepped and ready to go. Yeah, I'd love to do one. If you know how to contact them, that'd be great. Reach out to us here at Blam Blam Truckers. So all you truckers out there in Blam Blam Truckerland, we just hope that you keep on Blam Blam trucking along.
And before I say see you, truckers, I'll just say, listen, if Kevin Feige happens to be watching, I mean, I don't mind. I know Bees doesn't want to work for you, but I'm perfectly fine with it. I've got ideas too.
I don't think the reason why I want to work for the WB is for Warner Brothers is because I honestly believe they would give me a chance to get the story I want to tell told. Disney seems to have their own agenda of the stories they want to tell, which is they're their stories to tell. They're not mine. So I'm cool with that. I get it. But I don't think I'd get the kind of creative freedom to tell a story with the characters I want to use that would resonate with the American people.
Whereas I'm just in it for the money, and Disney has money, so I'll take it. I'm kidding.
Wow. Yeah, Kevin, give him a call.
All right. Well, everyone
if Disney wants to hear a movie pitch, we did an entire episode or 2 episodes or whatever it was on me with stories for Disney. I have stories for everything you can possibly imagine, even shows I don't watch like Doctor Who. I've got some great Doctor Who pitches.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you guys again, and we will see you, truckers. If I can find the off button.
If I can turn back time. Wow, I'm so off.